Hello and welcome to the RPG Blender, where we give lesser played games and forgotten settings the roll the dice they deserve. I'm your host, Game Master George, and today I'll be giving you another list of 5 non-Dungeons & Dragons RPGs for you to try. But what topic will we cover today? Well, getting a bit personal for a moment. This week was my son's first birthday. Naturally, I've been thinking about how to introduce him to tabletop gaming, once, he's old enough to roll the dice instead of trying to eat them. So today I'd like to take a look at 5 games that I would use to introduce my kid to tabletop RPGs. We'll talk about what the game is, as well as what I think would make it a good addition to my kid's gaming development. To note, I'll be ranking them according to my personal preference, not the order which I would introduce them to my son. So if this sounds interesting to you, or if you'd like to check out our future content, be sure to subscribe and click that notification bell. Or if you'd like to talk about this or any other topics, pop on over to our new Discord. Get notified when new content is released, get help with whatever RPG you're dealing with, or just get in for some upcoming free content. Anyway, with all that dirty self-promotion out of the way, let's dive into my top 5 tabletop RPGs for kids. First up, we have Starport. This game has very little in the way of mechanics to worry about. It's basically drop a die and compare it to a target. However, there are 2 reasons why I like this game for kids. First, this game de-emphasizes violence as a solution for problems. Now, before you at me about this, no, I am not saying that violence in games turns kids into sociopaths. But I do think that it is important for there to be games out there which present children with problems that can't be solved by killing things. Your players can do things like freezing an enemy or catching them in a net, but no stabbing, shooting, hitting, etc. Instead, it promotes solutions like sneaking, bargaining, or distracting. Not only does this help demonstrate that not all games need players killing things, but it also promotes creative problem solving. The second reason I like this game is due to the way it can be used to teach resource management. See, the main mechanic behind this game is simply rolling a d20, but each player will have tokens which they can spend to improve the roll. These are spread between smarts, sneakiness, strength, and helpfulness. When you're making a challenge related to the first 3, you can spend the associated tokens to increase the die roll at a 1-for-1 basis. Your helpfulness tokens can instead be used to improve anyone else's roll. You can never spend them on yourself. These tokens are what I like most, a simple way to teach kids budgeting and resource management. This is obviously an important life skill, and you can emphasize it by reminding players that while they could spend all 4 of their sneakiness tokens to succeed at this check, then they wouldn't have any left for the next one. So this serves as a way to simply introduce resource mechanics, which will become much more complex with other more advanced RPGs. Next on my list, and I apologize for horribly butchering the pronunciation, is Rutama. Rutama is a game of exploration and world building, described as having a similar feel to the Studio Ghibli films. The mechanics are nothing spectacular, but they're simple enough for younglings to grasp. But where it really shines is with its cooperative world building, something viewers already know I love, and the GMPC. Hear me out. As I mentioned, this is a game about world exploration. When the game starts out, you and your players will define the world together. There are 6 aspects of the world to define. You will pass the sheet to your players, and each of them will define one of those 6 aspects. Once everyone has done so, you can either fill in the gaps yourself, or ask the players to volunteer additional answers to these questions. Further, as you explore the world, you'll repeat this for every town that you come across. Little by little, you and your players will work together to build out this world. This helps introduce them to creative expression in an impactful way, as they will be able to interact with their creation, seeing how the choices they made during the creation affect the town or the world. This game also comes with a bit of a built-in safety net in the GMPC. The Ryuutama is the Game Master's character in this world. A fledgling dragon, you've gone out into the world to seek travelers and experience their stories. This leads you to the party. As they grow, as their stories deepen, your character improves too. In the beginning, you might simply be an occasional unseen presence, using your benedictions to aid the party in their time of need. But as you grow, you may eventually join the party as a shape-shifted animal companion, before finally revealing yourself to them entirely. Now, just because you're a GMPC does not mean that you're all-powerful. You still have rules that you must follow, and you must expend resources to use your benedictions. But this gives you a unique opportunity to have a dedicated mouthpiece with the party, as well as being able to help them through difficult moments. You can use this character to talk with the PCs about things that they've experienced, how it's affected them, how they feel about the decisions they've made, help them to see the consequences of their actions, or to process recent events. I would highly recommend having this character end each session by talking to the PCs in this way. Help your players work through actual mental development by giving them someone to talk to that isn't directly them talking to their parents. Moving ahead, we're ramping up the complexity a bit with the Kids on Bikes series. This includes Kids on Bikes and Kids on Brooms. If you want a more in-depth look at these games, you can take a look at my tutorial series. But to summarize, these are narrative-heavy games, themed on Stranger Things and Harry Potter. These games represent increased complexity and mechanics, while giving the players more freedom. This feels like a building on of the lessons taught by the other games. In Kids on Bikes, your characters are kids, and so they'll need to think creatively to get around problems caused by creatures that punch well outside of their weight class. Meanwhile, the magic system in Kids on Brooms is so open-ended that it gives your young ones free reign to be creative with their spellmaking. Adding on to that, these games have some of the best cooperative world building and relationship crafting I have ever seen in a game, again increasing the creative writing fundamentals being introduced earlier in Rutama. Finally, the themes of Kids on Bikes and Kids on Brooms are perfect for drawing in new players, where Stranger Things and Harry Potter are in the forefront of much of popular culture. The familiarity of these settings makes it easy for people, especially kids, to dive right in. The most complex, yet likely the end goal for training your fledgling dice heads, is Pugmire. Pugmire is a game where you play as an anthropomorphized dog trying to be a good boy. Importantly, this game is based on Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. I will stand by this being a non-D&D list here. The game is based on some of the OGL items from D&D 5th edition, but the game itself is distinct enough from the game that it's based on. There are enough differences between Pugmire and Dungeons & Dragons that I feel it's able to stand on its own and deserves some attention. Also, this similarity is why I think it's a great game to use for your young ones. The other games on this list serve to gradually introduce new elements, or to add complexity to the game as your children grow. Then, when they feel comfortable, you can use Pugmire to throw them into much more complexity while keeping the kid-friendly theming of animal people. This game serves as a culmination of what they've learned, and a final challenge before you throw them into the crunch-heavy games that make up some of my personal favorites. Or just good old D&D. Plus, they have an alternate version where you play as cats called Monarchies of Mau. You can keep your good boys, I'm gonna be the best cat. Now, before moving on to my number one choice, I just wanted to make a call out to one category of games which I think can easily be used to introduce new players, and especially younger players, to tabletop RPGs. These are the oft-ignored one-page RPGs. These games have, obviously, very simple mechanics, being that they need to fit everything on one page. This makes it ideal for an impromptu one-shot, be it for kids or adults. Further, they have some wildly varied themes and ideas behind them, so you can find a game to match anything you want to play around with. So next time you're looking for a last-minute game, check out one of the multitude of free one-page games out there. Finally, my number one pick is Puppetland. Mechanically, Puppetland is the simplest game on this list. It is completely diceless and narrative. Instead of stats and dice, your characters have lists of things that they are, things they can do, and things they cannot do. As long as a task fits within their cans, they'll succeed. Obviously, that's a quick and easy simplification, but the full rules are very short and worth a full read. Now, there are a few reasons that I consider this an ideal game for younger players. First, the character creation appeals to multiple creative elements for the child. Not only will there be normal PC staples, naming and descriptions, but the player will also need to draw their puppet on their sheet. This change from purely verbal descriptors to creating a visual representation helps make the character more real for a child. After that, the rest of character creation is talking about your character's capabilities in terms of what they can and cannot do, not mechanics and numbers. They're things like, for a shadow puppet, being able to turn sideways to become invisible as long as there's only one person looking. Descriptive capabilities rather than numerical advantages help the player see the creation behind the sheet. Second, the entire game is played in the first person. They don't narrate actions as Sally goes down to the lake. Instead, the player of Sally would say, "I shall go down to the lake to see if Judy has left me a treat." This is honestly the hardest part of the game, but it helps build the idea of you being your character. This can help teach your players how to get into character, how to treat a character as an aspect of themselves, rather than an external force like in a video game. Finally, this game is limited to 1 hour of gameplay. This is a perfect little chunk of time, long enough for your players to become invested in the story, but not so long as to challenge the attention span of a young mind. At the end of the hour, all puppets fall asleep and will awaken at the next game safe in their beds. Of course, this is an out-of-game hour, not in-game, so this hour could be a week or more of in-game time. An hour is golden, but is not an hour. This is one of my favorite rules ever written. And that leads to what I would love to do as further learning experience. Have your young players turn the game into a story. The games are short enough that they should be able to, after every session, build their creative writing skills by writing down the events of the game. Then, by the end of the campaign, they'll have an excellent campaign journal full of the adventures of their character. This all combines into a game that is uniquely able to stimulate multiple areas of a young mind, and to promote their growth in multiple creative areas. Just maybe play down the setting a little bit with the very young ones. They don't need to know that Punch is a murderer wearing the skin of the Maker. You can just hide that in the background. So that's my list. Thanks for sticking around. If any of these games appeal to you, I've left links down in the description to PDFs and hard copies where available. Disclaimer, these are likely affiliate links, so if you pick up a game using one of them, we may get some commission. But hey, you get a new RPG and you get to support the channel. Win-win, right? And speaking of supporting the channel, we're still a little fish here in the YouTube sea, so if you found this video helpful, please like, comment, and subscribe. It tells us that you like what we're doing, it helps us get ahead of the YouTube algorithm, and it costs you nothing. If you'd like to hang out with myself or other cast members, head on over to our Discord channel or join us on Twitch. We're always looking for new ideas of games to play or videos to make, and those places give you a direct line to our ears. Links also in the massively expanding description. Anyway, thank you again, and remember, there's gaming outside the Forgotten Realms.